Hello and welcome to the Cameo Show. Today I am joined by my husband, Greg Braun. Hi, Greg.
Hi, Cameo.
Greg likes to start us off with a dad joke. So, Greg, do you have a dad joke for us today?
I do. How do you tell the difference between fake spaghetti and real spaghetti?
I don't know.
Fake spaghetti is an impasta.
That's a good one. Now I'm hungry all of a sudden.
Yeah.
So today we are going to talk about something that I brought up to Greg. I was writing in my newsletter. My new newsletter, The Weekly Reset, is available to subscribe to. It launches on September 1st. But I was writing about something in that newsletter and I shared it with Greg, and it was a story that maybe you didn't even remember. Is that right?
Yeah, I didn't remember the details. So.
Just that it happened. So,
yeah.
Gosh, back in 2005, I was 4 months pregnant with our daughter, Faith. And we were definitely very into the music scene at that stage in our relationship. You weren't playing in a band, but you had been playing in bands your entire existence, basically. And we did a lot of live music. We still do, but definitely in that early stage of our relationship. And so we were big fans of an up and coming band at the time called Breaking Benjamin. And we had seen them play like the summer before. So this is like April of 2005. So we had seen them play like the summer of 2004 at Pierre's in Fort Wayne. And there weren't like a lot of people there. It was a really kind of intimate opportunity to see them play on their come up. And we got to meet them afterward. And like,
there was 5 people at that show. We at the Pierre show, we stood on the barricade and they just played. It was like they were warming up. They were going to go on tour and open for Godsmack. And
yeah, there was like no one there.
Break. That's when their first album came out. They were just starting to break on the radio. And those were the Napster days. So we had burnt their songs, downloaded their songs and just we're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And then we drove over to Pierre's and we're just like blown away. They were just walking around talking and just being normal dudes,
Just like when you would play. It was just like a bunch of guys that were, you and your bandmates. When we were driving over, so it's 2 carloads full of guys and me. I didn't know any of the songs at the time. I didn't really know who they were yet, maybe one song. And so that was my first introduction. And you're right, there weren't very many people there at all. So it was a really cool thing. We got their set list. They all signed it. We probably had a couple drinks, if I remember correctly.
That was their original drummer too. He didn't last very long. Once they took off, they got a new guy in there. So it was a pretty monumental opportunity to see them on their come up,
Yeah.
But fast forward to
so
story.
now it's the spring of 2005. We had seen them. We did not get tickets. I don't know why, but we did not get tickets. They were playing at the Newport Music Hall in Columbus, Ohio, which was like our hometown venue. It's kind of a big, special venue, especially for you, Greg, as a musician coming up in that area. It's like monumental to play there. Like it's on the goal list of every local band for sure. And so many huge national acts have come through there that it's like amazing. So here they are playing at the Newport Music Hall. We're big fans, saw them in an intimate show setting. They're on the come up. We didn't get tickets, probably because I was pregnant and thinking like, oh, I shouldn't go to a concert. I'm pregnant.
Yeah.
But we decided that day, like, we're not going to accept that we didn't get tickets and that we can't get tickets. So because of your experience as a musician and a touring musician, we knew that they would be behind the Newport. You knew the layout from playing there before. We knew that they would be back there, like getting ready to load in probably the middle of the day. So you and our friend John and we went to Ragorama first. Do you remember? We were like thrift store shopping, looking for some killer t-shirts. And then we went to the alley behind the Newport, and we're like, there they are. Oh my God. They're like in their bus and the trailer, and there's like people scattering around. And it was like drizzling. It was raining. I'm barely pregnant, but I was pregnant and I knew it. So I felt weird, but we were like, okay, well, the only way we're getting into this show is to go talk to somebody. And so guess who was nominated to do so? That would be me. So I'm like, all right, whatever. So I get out and I go walk through this rain. I remember I had on like a big hooded sweatshirt because I put the hood up because it was raining. And I found this guy who looked like he was probably with the band. He had on like some weird looking jumpsuit and he looked like
here's somebody.
He looked like somebody. And he was like meandering around the area. So I'm like, he's got to be somebody. It ended up being their tour manager, Freddie. And I just started talking to him about how we didn't get tickets and we loved the band and we saw them play at Pierre's and yada, 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 yada. And either he offered to put us on the guest list so I would shut up. But I think what actually happened was like, is there any way, I asked, is there any way that we can get into the show tonight? And he said, I will put you and your two friends on the guest list. And I was like, okay, right on. High five. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir. I returned to the car and told you guys. And I think you looked at me like, yeah, right. No way. Absolutely not. But then you were like, well, why would she make that up? Like, obviously that was a conversation that was had. So we hurried home to our apartment and got ready in our new thrift store t-shirts. And you guys were like not sold, so much so that we called the Newport to ask if we were actually on the list. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And the girl was like, yep, there you are. Cameo was Morton at the time, +2. Like, wow, not only did he like actually remember, but he like actually did it. Holy shit, this is happening. So we went to the Newport that night. We walked up like, we're here, gave my ID. We were on the guest list. It was really super cool. And we got in and we got to see the show, this sold out show at the Newport. Now, I share that story in my newsletter and I share that story today because when I look back at that time and at other times in our life, I realized that like the answer is always no, unless you ask the question. So we could have not gone. We could have been like, damn, bummer, we didn't get tickets. Next time. We could have shown up and I could have chickened out. Or we could have just like not even thought it was possible, but we were like, well, it's at least worth a shot. And we took a chance. I took a chance and I went out there and like, there was a 50-50, probably more than a 50-50 shot that I was going to get denied, like not going to happen, not even find somebody that's worthy of talking to that could make anything like that happen. But I got lucky, and I got lucky because I put myself in a position to be lucky. We went and said boldly, well, we're at least going to try. Walked out there, didn't really care. Like, what's the worst that was going to happen? I got ignored or I got shut down. And then I have to like take my bruised ego back to the car and say that I didn't succeed. But the upside of that situation was so much greater, and it ended up coming to fruition. And there have been many times like that where that has been the case, where if I didn't ask, there is no way in hell that it would have ever happened. And it's been some pretty amazing opportunities that we've been in, or situations that we've been in, because we simply were bold enough to ask. And I'm not advocating that you like stalk people or hang out in dark alleys, but I'm just saying that it's worth showing up to a situation to try and go after something that you want. And that applies to showing up and getting on a guest list, or showing up for a job interview, or showing up and advocating for something for your children. It's just a matter of like being willing to take an opportunity and make some luck for yourself. Greg, I don't know if we've ever talked about this before. In fact, I'm pretty sure that we haven't, but you have such a great story about that when you joined Pay the Girl. So I feel like that's another example, and it's a way blast from the past, just like the Breaking Benjamin story, but just another example of like not putting yourself in that position. It was already a no. So you didn't really have anything to lose. So can you share that story and how you were brave enough to like go
Yeah.
for it?
Yes, thank you. I actually have 3 stories.
Okay, well then
I have
I will turn the
3
microphone over
stories.
to you, my friend. Take it away.
I have 3 stories. So the first one is right in line with your Breaking Benjamin story. You also did that at Metallica. We went to see Metallica at the Shot, which is like a huge arena, sold out, you know, and it was with Gamby and Abby and you and I. And we had tickets all the way in the nosebleeds. Like we went all the way, we stood up there. I mean, like literally we were at the top. I mean, there might have been one row behind us, but it was the top of the bowl.
It was
And
up high. It was up so high that I was like fearing for my life, looking
yeah,
down at
it was like,
how
what?
far it was. I was like
And,
dizzy and I was like, nope, I'm not doing this. No way.
and the greatest thing was, I hope he doesn't kill me for saying this, but when we got up to those absolutely atrocious, horrible seats, uh, Mike, there was somebody in our seats, you know, and Mike, who is like 6'7", just a giant mass of a human being, you know, huge Metallica fan. He's like, "You're in our seats," and these kids are like, you know, so. But the moral of the story is, you literally stood there and you're like, "I'll be right back." No exaggeration. You said, "I'll be right back," and then they looked at me and I'm like, "Yeah." You know, you were kind of newer in the scene. Like they didn't understand the Cameo experience yet. You know, they didn't know what you're made of. So I'm like, I have faith that she'll, you know, let's see what she does. I think you said, "Give me $20 or
Yeah, I
something
said,
like
give me
that."
$20. I'll be right back.
Yeah, yeah. Literally. And within 20 minutes, you're like, "Follow me, let's go." And we like marched back down to the Huntington VIP section, and they're like, "Which one's your husband?" And you're like, "Right there." And you told them that I'm like a huge Metallic fan, which I am, you know,
And
geez,
everybody else there was,
yeah.
you know.
But they're like, "Okay, right this way." So we got these VIP passes that were like right down in the pit area, where at the end of the night they're throwing their picks and we're trying to catch them. I mean, it was just an amazing concert experience that if you just were too shy or too scared or too, you know, too fearful to hear a no, we would have enjoyed that from, you know, a mile away. But instead it was an amazing opportunity, amazing experience. So definitely an example of the power of shooting your shot. So
Yeah.
as you were talking about, you know, the pay the girl thing, I wanted to try out for that band, but they called me the day before and were like, "We already got our guy. We got plane tickets booked, and you know, we're good to go. Sorry to waste your time." And I was like, "You've got to let me try. You've got to let me, you know, I promise you'll be happy." And drove to Cincinnati, you know, hours away, tried out and got the gig. So I guess being like relentless about knowing that you want to have at least a shot to show what you can do is the key. Having that kind of conviction, which I have about music, or especially back then, I was like, this is what I'm going to do. You know, this was my life's purpose here.
I know that story, but for those listening who don't, how did you come across that there was an opening for this band? Give a little bit more of the backstory there, because I think
Okay.
that there's so much that's important to the fact that you even got the opportunity in the first place, and then had to come back swinging like, you already got your guy, but I'm not taking no, like I got this far.
So back to the Newport, at that time in my life, I was in a very up and coming successful band that was with my best friend, my brother, and you know, and a couple other guys we went to high school with, that we were homies. We were like in it to win it, and we had been at it for a couple years, and we started playing in this our little hometown of like 2,000 people, you know, playing at the local bar on Friday and Saturday nights, to developing our following to a point to where we were actually at that time playing at the Newport Music Hall ourselves as the headlining band, selling tickets, selling merch. We were working closely with the radio station at the time. I mean, I get chills thinking about it, but it was, if you knew me then, it was everything that I lived for. I mean, my license plate said myopia. It was my life. I mean, I literally lived for myopia. Everything was great in my reality at that time with music, but I saw an opportunity to play with a band that had a record deal, and it was like the next level. And I'm like, I got to take this chance, I got to take this shot. Unfortunately, it was the end of myopia from my experience, working with them. It wasn't my intention that it would be over. It was just like, I just got to see what happens here. So I saw on a message board, there was a band looking for a drummer. So I was like, I got to take this shot. So I reached out to them, and they sent me some songs, and I learned them over just a couple of days. And I said, we'll have you come down to Cincinnati to try out. And so I was just like, oh boy, this is crazy. So I learned the songs as best as I could. And the day before I was supposed to go down there, the lead singer, Jason, called me and was like, hey, we've already got our guy. We've got a photo shoot in New York. The flight's already booked. It's a done deal. Sorry, And I was like, man, you got to let me come down. I promise you that I'm your guy. You just got to give me a shot. You got to let me try. After some reluctance, he agreed to let me come down. So the next day I drove down to Cincinnati, tried out. And I remember just the first note that I hit with the bass player, Drew. And it was just like, we locked in and looked at each other. Like we were both like, what was that? And yeah, it was a moment, and we played the songs a couple times, and then they're like, can you come back tomorrow to meet our manager? So I went back down the next day. I literally did not sleep. I stayed up all night and just was so excited. So went down, met the manager, and then by that end of that week, I was on a plane by myself to New York to do the photo shoot, to do it's just like a big blur, it just happened. But if I wasn't convicted in my stance on that, like I know I can do this. I'm your guy. I can do this because of all the prep, because of all the history of delivering at playing the drums and doing what I do. I knew in my gut that I would show up and deliver. And even if they said no, come on, whatever I need to do to do that. And I mean, I think that's kind of the message there, is just like having that kind of conviction to believe in yourself and not be afraid to shoot your shot.
Yeah. And just also the ability to be open. So like you said, and I know I witnessed this, and this is when we met, myopia was huge, absolutely rocking. And it wasn't your intention to ever leave that band, but you just kind of had an openness to be aware of other things going on around you, and a fearless pursuit of your dream. And so you weren't really sure what would happen. You didn't have to be following those message boards. You didn't have to be open to that. Blinders up, this is what I'm doing, but you were. And so you had put yourself in a position of luck, and that is as it pertains to something that's greater than just meandering around behind the concert venue looking for an opportunity to get in. It was a life-changing moment for you that opened doors and experiences that you may not have otherwise experienced had you not been brave and bold enough to be like, I'm just going to go for this. And I don't really know what's going to happen. And I have to be open to the fact that it may not happen. I also have to be open to the fact that it could just as easily happen, and then deal with whatever happens from that point forward. I think we get stuck not just being afraid of like being rejected, but then also like, well, then what happens? What if I get what I'm asking for, right? Like, what if I have put myself in this position of luck? What if I've looked for these opportunities and have gone for them, and then it actually happens, and oh my God, now what? Like I feel like I'm experiencing that in some ways right now in my own personal life and endeavors. And it just is like, well, don't worry about that. Just go for it. Like, don't get stuck on that step and hold yourself back from trying. And so this message is kind of for me at this time too, like each and every time you take this opportunity to go for something, you just have to be willing to like accept whatever happens either way, but don't stop before trying. That's where we mess up.
I'm just being brutally honest with you. We've done some really cool shit in our lives, and it's all come into fruition after we've heard no. I heard no. Jason was like, we're good. We don't need you. We've got a drummer. And if any piece of me was like uncertain of my conviction about doing that, I would have been like, I would have heard him say no. But I was so determined to do that shit that I'm like, you just said no. Excuse me. What? No. Excuse me. What? No. And that's how I am in sales and life and like business. Like when we moved to Florida, I sat down with a list of realtors and called hundreds of real estate agents and heard no 100 times. But like I'm gonna get a yes here, and when you get that yes, then that's the whole point. But there's also another story in this. There's also another crazy story. So fast forward a couple years after Pay the Girl, we're living in Marysville, and our favorite band that we know from the Cleveland area, Ian Eddie and the band Leo, they were on the come up. And we went to go see them, just coincidentally opening up for Breaking Benjamin in Toledo. And Breaking Benjamin still had their same manager, Freddie. He was still the guy. And he just so happened to be managing Leo at that time.
God, when you say that out loud, I'm just like, no way. None of this could be real. It's all made up.
We went to go see them play, and they were amazing. Leo opening up for Breaking Benjamin. And I was like, I could totally kill it. I could totally do this gig for them. I could be their drummer. And lucky for me, I have a wife who believes in me. And you sat there with me and you were like, you can. We have a 2-year-old, we have a business at home. I mean, like I had no business trying to be a rock drummer at that time in my life, where we're just trying to establish ourselves as, parents. We're trying to be adults. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
trying to be grown-ups.
You absolutely can. And you should. And here's what we can say, like you were just 100% supportive. And I mean, so none of this happens without that kind of support from a spouse.
Sure.
We weren't even married at that time even.
No, we were getting married. Like you were going to go on tour
in months
and then like return just in time to get married. Yeah.
So
hot and heavy around here.
Yeah. So you're like encouraging. So I reach out to him and say, hey, I could smoke your drummer. Let me have the opportunity. And he said to me, it's funny you should mention that, because we're having some issues and we're kind of like open to that. And I'm like, okay. So I got in my Trailblazer, loaded up my drums, kissed my soon-to-be wife and baby farewell, and drove to St. Louis and rehearsed and got that gig. And in a couple months, I was there for maybe a couple weeks, and then we went out on tour with a few different bands at that time. And it was like, again, if you don't shoot your shot, it's not going to happen. And if you're not 100% convicted about it, you can't push through those little objections or hurdles, that might be standing in your way, because you won't even see them if you have that kind of blind conviction about what you want.
That's right. So what I hear when I was listening to myself tell the story and now listening to you is something else that I think might keep people from pursuing things that they want or going after these opportunities. And it's this borderline, and I'm just being honest, borderline like arrogance of like, I deserve this. I can do this. This is mine for the taking. But here's the thing. Sometimes you just have to believe that a little bit in your gut to like coach yourself up to being brave enough to do it. You don't actually have to be an asshole. And so I think like for anyone who feels like, well, who am I to put myself in that position or ask for something that I think I deserve with so much conviction, just take a deep breath and remember that like, you asking for something or going after something that you want is not selfish. It's not arrogant. There's a way that you can put yourself in that position. There's a way that you can ask. There are conversations that you can have that are respectful of you and the other party and of the situation. So when we say these things, it's like, wow, they're really like believing in themselves, feeling themselves. And yeah, you kind of have to be, but you don't have to present yourself in that way. So I just think that's important to mention, because I think that that may be a hang up. Sometimes that's a hang up for me where I'm like, who do I think I am? And then I have to like really get into myself and be like, you got this, girl. You know, I got to be my own biggest cheerleader in some of these moments, because I'm human too. Like I also, it might be on a smaller scale compared to somebody else, or it might not come across, but like, I also have insecurities. I also have self-doubt. I also feel scared and nervous when I'm going to go after something. And so, you know, sometimes you have to be that way and have just a relentless belief about yourself. It doesn't have to be portrayed in that way.
Yeah. And I think the lubrication or the salve for that negative self-talk is if you're just always rooted in a place of win-win, thinking win-win, like if I win, you win, we win, I win, you. I mean, like if you believe that, then it's going to help you push through. So like, for example, when I joined Pay the Girl, I was rooted in win-win. I was excited to go make connections in the industry so I could bring that back to my boys and we could further Myopia's career. And again, I'm a very optimistic person. I sometimes, you know, the reality of the situation is at that level, it's business and it's, you know, it's very competitive. And so things didn't pan out the way in my fantasy, you know, world it would, but thinking in win-win helps you like, okay, I'm doing this, but we all can win here, you know? So it's just really surreal, because as you start shooting your shot and building these little evidence-based, evidence-backed stories about yourself, you can go and do things even bigger and have more confidence developed. So like when I was in Leo, we were playing at the Mercury Lounge in New York, and the same guy that you went up to and said, hey, can I get tickets to the show, Breaking Benjamin? That's Leo's manager now, Freddie. And he's giving us this pre-show pep talk, like a head coach, you know, yelling at us. And I'm sitting there like, I can't believe this is really happening right now. You know, like it's just unbelievable, because the world is so small, you know, when you just start shooting shots and making connections, it's like, what are the odds that these same players would be involved here? You know, it's mind-blowing. And then let me just say one more thing. And then 9 years ago today, we moved to Florida and took a big shot. And where do we think that we could do that? Thinking that you can just move and restart your life. And that was a big, bold step out there, a big, bold opportunity that through the times that we've tried to make things happen, it kind of gives us this confidence, like, all right, let's do this. We can do this.
Yeah, there's a couple of things there. You mentioned the move to Florida, and that was like definitely looking for opportunity, putting ourselves in a position of surviving in our marriage and in our family life at the time. And I feel like in thinking about that in this way, we could have not, just like we're talking about, I could have not gone and asked the question. You could have not made the phone call to say, let me try out. We could have not decided to try something new, and we could have stayed where we were, and that would have been just fine too, but it may have panned out a little bit differently. But instead, we looked at where we were, this rock bottom situation in our life at the time, and said, what can we do? What opportunities can we create for ourselves? That included taking some big risks and doing some things that were big and scary, and some out of necessity and others out of just blind optimism. But it was this boldness to say, I deserve we deserve more than where we are right now in our relationship and in our situation. And what is the best scenario for us to make it? The other thing that I wanted to mention, kind of piggybacking off of what you started to say, like, it doesn't necessarily get easier. Like, I still get nervous as hell when I'm going to ask a big ask, or I'm going to talk to somebody new, or I'm going to ask someone to be on the podcast, or whatever the case may be. But you just get better at it, because I've heard no way more times than I've heard yes. And now it's just something that, like, it just happens. It's just part of, like, I wake up, I brush my teeth. I wake up, I ask questions. They may be answered with no, and I have to move on and pick up and continue my day. Like, it's just part of life. And so that doesn't mean that it's gotten easier to ask the questions or to go for the big things or to seek out opportunities, but it does mean that it's just become something that's, I'm better at accepting. I'm better at saying, okay, well, that didn't work. Next. Okay, that didn't work. Next. Okay. I know I'm eventually going to get a yes. It's just, I have to hear no, and I have to be okay with that. And it's just, I've gotten better at hearing no and knowing what to do with it, instead of internalizing it and thinking, oh, that's it. That's the end. That's the end of me. One no, and I'm done. It's a continual effort and constant cheering for yourself to keep showing up.
Yeah. I mean, and again, it's if you believe that if I win, you win, and we all get better if I win, we're all progressing. So if you just keep that as your mantra and your driving force, it's not that if I win, then you're going to suffer, like,
Right.
If I make this sale and this real estate agent decides to work with me, they're going to be not working with them. Like, I believe that if they work with us, they're going to love it, and the client's going to love it, and everyone's going to have a great experience. And I believe that I could be the best drummer for this band at that time. Let me have a shot. Let's go. Like, that kind of just energy,
Yeah. Back to not selfish, but rooted in intentionality. And the intentionality underlying is that there's something bigger. There's more opportunity for everyone. This I win, you win type of mentality. Yeah, that's great. So as I was writing that newsletter this morning, I don't even know where it came from. It just popped into my head, this story. And I'm like, oh my God, there's such a great message to that. That's the message. If you don't ask, the answer is no. I also have said, and I've heard you say this too, like, the answer is already no. Like, I'm going to ask and the answer is already no. So what am I don't have anything to lose. So if you don't ask, it's no. Half the time when you already are asking, it's already no. Just ask, just go for it. Yeah. Nobody's going to often, I mean, I guess it could happen. So I don't want to say nobody ever, blah, blah, blah. But, like, it's not very often that someone's going to walk up and tap you on the shoulder and be like, hey, I've got this great opportunity for you. And it's, like, exactly in alignment with what you want or what your intention is or where you're headed in your life. That doesn't happen. Not very often anyway. It probably does, but not very often. So you have to really be relentless in your pursuit of what you want. You're in the driver's seat.
That's the other piece to this, is knowing what you want and I think it's more about, like, what people feel like they deserve to have in their life, what they'll accept or what they deserve or what they feel like they're worth, and being open to asking for it and not accepting sitting in the nosebleed seats. It's like, no, give me $20. I'll be right back. Whatever. And then,
I didn't have to use the $20, just for the record.
Yeah. Or, well, that'd be nice to go play in a band that has a record deal. That'd be nice. Like, do it, go for it. And I think it's just like the reps and the practice, just like anything else, you build that muscle memory, and then you get used to asking for it, and there you go.
You know who's a master at this? We should interview her. Faith.
Oh yeah.
Our daughter Faith. That girl is not afraid to hear no as many times as it takes until there's a yes. You want to talk about relentless in pursuit of what she wants. And Ben too, for that matter, with what he's doing right now, building his his audience and wanting to be a streamer. It might be a pipe dream. It might be something that other people don't see as even possible, but he does, and he's going for it. And there's something about learning that early that's going to carry them far in life, and something about learning that even as an adult that it can shift your reality, can absolutely alter where you are and take you to where you want to be. So always ask.
Always ask for what you want.
It's a no unless you ask. The answer is always no.